It's a real pleasure to be here. I would like to start by thanking the Communist Party of India for inviting us, the Ambassador of Palestine and myself, to participate in this important meeting in solidarity with Palestine and with Cuba. As Conrad Pala said, India and Cuba are celebrating 65 years of bilateral relations. This relation started in 1959. Even a few months after the triumph of the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro sent one of the important senior leaders in Cuba, Che Guevara, to visit India. It happened on July 1959. And the history links India, Cuba, and Palestine, because Che Guevara, before coming to India on July 1959, he was the first Latin American left leader or personality to visit Gaza to convey a message from the Cuban Revolution that we support the right of the Palestinian people for their freedom. It was in 1959. In 1973, Fidel Castro visited India. It was the first visit. Fidel was attending an important meeting in Algeria. He passed in transit here in Delhi and then went to Vietnam. He was also the first president to visit the south of Vietnam when they were fighting the imperialism. And this year, 1973, Cuba established diplomatic relations with the state of Palestine. Now we are hearing different governments recognizing the state of Palestine, and it's good. But why we are wasting more than 50 years and putting these people suffering this policy of genocide from Israel? So it is the strong links between the forces that defend the social justice, the right for independence of the people, for the self-determination, for the sovereignty. Well, as Conrad Pala said, I am not coming from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I have been working for more than 20 years in the Communist Party of Cuba. And I know very well the strong support of the Communist Party of India, among other left forces, to the solidarity with Cuba, condemning this policy of the blockade that has been suffering the Cuban people for more than 65 years. The blockade is totally insane and criminal policy. From the very beginning of the revolution, the United States understood that the Cuban Revolution had the support of the huge majority of the Cuban population. And they cannot defeat the Cuban Revolution trying to convince the people that the socialist was not right, not defending their rights in Cuba, because it was totally the contrary. The triumph of the Cuban Revolution was the first time Cuba can enjoy its real freedom, its independence, and bring to the Cuban population the right for education, for health, for culture, for practicing sport, for social security, for everything that we didn't have before. And they started to think how to trying to defeat the revolution, creating problems inside the Cuban society, dividing the Cuban society, trying to make the Cuban people suffering because of lack of food supply, oil supply, putting sanctions for Cuba. It is the essence of the policy of the blockade, to create limitations, imposing lack of social needs for Cuba. It has been the policy from the more than 65 years. But today, the blockade that Cuba is suffering is not the same that 65 years ago. It's different because now there has been a strong Cuban community, anti-Cuban mafia in Miami that is most represented in the US Congress. There are more than 11 Cuban Americans represented in the US Congress. They all belong to these strike groups in Florida. And there is today, the State Secretary of the US is one of those that belongs to the mafia in Florida. And he also is a personal advisor for the national security. So they are using today all the instruments in order to defeat the Cuban Revolution. For example, the first step made by this administration was to reinclude Cuba in the list of countries that supposedly sponsor terrorists. And this is a key sanction that affects all the possible financial transaction of Cuba to any foreign bank. For example, we don't have direct financial relations, banking relations with India because of this sanction of the US. So the US sanctions is also an attempt to the possibility to have normal relations with any country in the world. Now they are persecuting all the vessels that provide oil to Cuba, putting sanctions on those companies, and we are suffering now lack of electricity in our country because of this policy. They are cutting all the possibility for the Cuban Americans, that we have more than 1 million in US, to send remittances to their relative in Cuba. That has been a practice for more than 60 years. They are trying to collapse the tourist sector in Cuba. Before COVID, we were able to reach 1 million tourists to Cuba, was the first income to the Cuban economy. Today it's difficult to recover this industry in Cuba because it not only affects the US citizens, also, for example, the Europeans and other nationalities. If they see if one European visits Cuba, they immediately suspend the right for those Europeans to travel to US. They deny the visa for those Europeans. See how long and how far goes this policy against our country. And it's true that it creates many difficulties. But in the year we are celebrating the centenary of the birth anniversary of Fidel. Fidel is an example. Fidel is a symbol. Fidel is not a man. Fidel became the principle of the revolution. Fidel became the determination of the Cuban people to overcome this situation, to defeat the blockade because of the resistance of our people, but also because we are taking all the necessary decisions in order to improve the Cuban economy, even though the blockade, and to provide more quality of life to our people. We are very proud that all the support that the communists in India has given to Cuba during all these years. In the forthcoming month, in October, Cuba is going to submit once again a resolution in the General Assembly of the United Nations condemning the US blockade towards Cuba. This resolution is the 33rd occasion we are presenting this resolution, and we have had the support of the international community. Only United States, Israel, and one of another country in all this year has voted against the resolution. So the resolution that has been approved in the General Assembly of the United Nations is a demonstration that the policy of the blockade is totally isolated in the international community. And we call all our friends to continue this fight condemning the blockade, because we need a very strong international campaign to show to the US that they are wrong, that they are losing prestige is they have shown in the international community that is totally unfair. It's a criminal blockade that should be lifted as soon as possible. It is a determination of the Cuban people. My friend, Fidel Castro, in his last speech during the 7th Congress to the Communist Party of Cuba, he made a short statement. He said, "Delegates, convey to our friends in all the world that Cuba revolution is going to fight, it's going to resist, and it's going to win." I would like to finish, if you allow me, to read the message, the greeting message of the Communist Party of Cuba to the 25th Congress of the Communist Party of India. The Communist Party of Cuba extends fraternal greetings to the Communist Party of India and its 25th Congress. Amid the complex situation the world is experiencing, the holding of this party conclave confirmed the commitment of Indian communists to the struggle for a more just and peaceful world. We wish you success at this Congress while ratifying our willingness to continue strengthening the brotherhood between our parties and peoples. We reaffirm our gratitude to the CPI for its commitment, solidarity with the Cuban Revolution, for its ongoing support in the fight against the criminal, economic, commercial, and financial blockade of the United States government, and for the exclusion of Cuba from the arbitrary list of states that allegedly sponsor terrorists. Greetings, comrades. Until victory, forever. Central Committee of the Communist Party of Cuba. Thank you so much.
The people united shall always be victorious. We shall fight, we shall win. We shall fight, we shall win.
The 25th Congress of the Communist Party of India, CPI, meeting in September 2025, reaffirms its historic and fraternal ties with the historic people and leadership of the Republic of Cuba. We recall Cuba's contributions to the anti-imperialist struggles, internationalist medical and social missions, and advances in education, health, and social welfare accomplished under conditions of continuing external pressures. Cuba has endured over 6 decades of coercive measures, economic sanctions, and an extraterritorial embargo that has had a severe impact on its economy and people's well-being. In 2025, Cuba has experienced repeated nationwide and regional power outrage, severely affecting daily life and critical public services. Recent steps taken by the US administration to reinforce Cuba-related restrictions and lists further constrain trade, travel, and remittance, amplifying hardships for Cuban families. International bodies, including the United Nations General Assembly, have repeatedly called for the end of US embargo as a violation of the principles of sovereign equality and development. Despite these difficult conditions, Cuba continues to contribute internationally, notably through medical cooperations, disaster relief, and solidarity actions, reflecting its long-standing commitment to internationalism. The CPI expresses serious concern about frequent nationwide power outages and infrastructure failures in Cuba. The pledge to explore, expand, and deepen bilateral cooperation in areas of energy, healthcare, water and sanitation, agricultural inputs and agrotechnology, medicines and medical equipments. It calls upon the Government of India to renew and expand diplomatic and technical cooperation with Cuba, including tailored programs to assist in energy grid stabilization, water pumping systems, hospitals, and cold chain equipments and spare parts procurement. The CPI further urges upon the Government of India to facilitate humanitarian channels for the export of pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, energy equipments, and foodstuffs to Cuba, ensuring transfers are not embedded by third-party sanctions. 25th Congress of the Communist Party of India hereby reaffirms its unwavering solidarity with the government and people of Cuba in their struggle to defend national sovereignty, social gains, and the dignity of the Cuban Revolution. It condemns unequivocally the economic, commercial, and financial blockade, unilateral sanctions and extraterritorial measures imposed on Cuba, which aggravate shortage of food, medicines, fuel, and hinder reconstruction and development. The CPI calls upon for the immediate and unconditional lifting of UN sanctions, US unilateral sanctions, and extraterritorial measures against Cuba, and urges the Government of India to publicly support the call for the end of the embargo in international fora, including the United Nations. The 25th Congress of Communist Party of India concludes by reaffirming once again that internationalism is integral to its politics. It pledges concrete solidarity to the Cuban people in their struggle for sovereignty, social justice, and development free from coercion. It calls upon progressive forces across India to join in solidarity with Cuba's voice, opposing imperial sanctions and building substantive people-to-people ties that strengthen Cuba's capacity to overcome present hardships. This is the resolution, solidarity resolution.
So, comrades, we pass this solidarity resolution in favor of Cuba.
So thank you, Ani.
Yes.
So, comrade, now we will
comrades,
have
let me
joint
ask them
photographs
to
with
आप
two
लोग,
Cuban ambassadors, with the presidium
चलिए.
members and national secretariat members
Yes.
and others to just
Yes.
come in the front and to have a
Yeah.
such kind of joint photograph.
Show it this side. Show this first, this side. इधर दिखाओ एक बार, उसके बाद उधर ले लेना. So we are with Fidel. Come in the front, all secretariat members, presidium members also. Come.
इनकलाब जिंदाबाद इनकलाब जिंदाबाद हमारी एकता जिंदाबाद We stand with Palestine. We stand with Palestine. From the river to the sea. From the river to the sea. Free, free Palestine. Free Palestine. Free, 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 free Palestine. Inqilab Zindabad. Inqilab Zindabad.
Oy, इधर ओंदी नंगे जो ना, ऐसे ले नंगे जो गाड़ी.
We stand with
थोड़ा उधर उधर बोल
चलेगा